morning, everyone. My name is Nicolette Chasse, and I am a member of the Worship and Music Committee. My pronouns are she and they. Welcome to our virtual service with the First Parish Plymouth congregation. These services will be posted on our Facebook page and on YouTube. The first part of our service is recorded. Following the benediction, the recording will end. Then we will go into our candles of joy and concern. This section is not recorded. Our service today is entitled Restoration and Repair and is presented by our Reverend Art Lavoie. Our technical director today is Linda Harding. Our guest musician today is Jeff Margulies, who you've already heard play the Native American double flute. Jeff began playing the wooden flute over 15 years ago. After performing on his own, he then connected with the nonprofit Tune Foolery, which he still sometimes performs with. Approximately 5 years ago, Jeff then began playing a very special double wooden flute. Jeff's flute was handmade by well-known indigenous Mexican flute maker and musician Guillermo Martinez of Southern California, who trained with Kensuro, a master Japanese woodworker, and later with the Tlingit instrument makers in Alaska, then with renowned Huicol musician Javier Quijas Xiaotl, an expert craftsman in Mesoamerican instruments, and finally with mentor Agustin Rodiles, also known as Zinzuni. We hope that you stay for our virtual coffee hour after the service. Whomever you are, whomever you love, whatever you believe, wherever you are on your journey, let us walk together this hour. Our call to worship this morning is by the Reverend Kathleen McTeague. Into this home, we bring our hunger for awakening. We bring compassionate hearts and a will toward justice. Into this home, we bring the courage to walk on after hard losses. Into this home, we bring our joy, our gratitude for ongoing blessings. By our gathering, we bless this place. In its shelter, we know ourselves blessed. Our opening hymn for today is number 134, Our World is One World.
A bridge or wall. Good morning. I'm the Reverend Arthur Lavoie. My pronouns are he, him, and his. Thank you for sharing this service with us this morning. And I invite you to join with me as I light the chalice and saying the words on your screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, to speak the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. So today I was thinking about things that need fixing, like a piece of paper, and you need some tape. Like the famous duct tape that can fix everything. And I mean everything. How's that for fixing things? Even gum can fix things. I remember when I was young, I had a favorite shirt and a favorite pair of jeans, and I wore them all the time. And they would have little tears, and I wouldn't tell anyone because I didn't want to lose them. Finally, one day, my mom saw the tears, and she saw me cry, scared that they'd be thrown out. The next thing I knew, she took out her sewing machine and she took out some fabric and she sewed hearts on all of the tears. And they became my heart jeans and my heart shirt. I have a story for you today called Repairing Relationships and Helping with Mistakes. It's adapted from Jocelyn Pima Scott and Erica Hewitt's story. After church one Sunday, Parker got to have a play date with her friend Killian. They were so excited to get to Parker's house that they ran inside. As they got to Parker's room, Killian slammed the door shut. Parker sorrowfully held up a bowl and showed Killian. I was so excited to show you this bowl, but it broke. And now I'm upset. Can we try to fix it together? Killian looked at her defensively. I didn't break it. Parker looked at him with surprise. I know you didn't break it. It broke this morning. But can you help me fix it? Killian answered with a question. You mean help you fix it even though I didn't break it? I just need you to understand that I'm a good person and I don't break bowls. Parker replied patiently, it's important to me that we figure out how to fix this bowl because it means a lot to me. Not because I think you broke it, but because it means a lot to me. Killian looked at the bowl for a while and said, okay then, do you have any ideas for how we can fix the bowl? Said Parker. Duct tape? Glue? Chewing gum? Killian jumped up. I have an idea. It's called kintsugi. Parker looked puzzled. Kintsugi? Well, Parker's mother poked her head in the door from the kitchen. Kintsugi is an ancient Japanese art of repairing broken pottery and ceramics, she said. Gold is used to highlight the beauty of the imperfections that remain when the broken item is repaired. We don't hide our breaks. We can celebrate them. That's right. The gold is used to remind the user over and over and over that something that was broken can be whole again, said Killian. In a way, that's what happens when other things break too, isn't it? Said Parker. What kind of things? Said her mother. Killian explained, my mom told me things can get broken and get fixed, like friendships and relationships. And sometimes when we hurt each other's feelings, it's like the thread between people breaks. But as a UU, we don't ignore that. We try to rebuild. We're supposed to rebuild our relationships and make them stronger. Parker's mom nodded her head. Yes, that is our job. When we see something broken, we try to fix it and make it stronger, whether or not it's our fault that it broke. May we all try to fix relationships.
Good morning, everyone. I've been asked to give a testimonial about our church and my relationship to it, and a little bit about my background, which many of you have heard when I've shared in the summer services about my spiritual journey, my personal creed. The fact is, I was brought up in an extremely religious home. Both of my parents were trained as ministers, as pastors, as evangelistic preachers. And our family life was centered around the church, reading of the Bible, memorizing Bible verses, going to church, learning music for church. And part of my religious teaching that I still remember was about tithing. I guess I was probably 5 or 6 or 7 when my parents started to give me an allowance every week. And they were careful in this 10-cent allowance to give me a nickel and 5 pennies so that 1 penny could be put into the offering on Sunday school on Sunday. And this was very important. And as I grew up in a very loving, secure home with many, many benefits, clean living, healthy relationships, etc., I saw that my parents would sit down with each other when they got paid, when their paychecks were cashed, and actually put money in envelopes for mortgage payment, utilities payment, gas for the car, food, etc. And there was an envelope for tithe. 10% of their income before taxes went to the church. Another 5% went to missionaries and other good projects. So learning to be a giver was something that was ingrained in me as a child. Now, as I matured, the beliefs and stories and dogma of this religion didn't make sense to me. And I eventually stopped attending that kind of a church. And it wasn't really until I retired and was living in a new place without people, without friends, that someone I met who knew that I was interested in multicultural things. I was married to a Mexican. I had taught Spanish and ESL. And this woman was an expert in the state of Wisconsin, where we lived, on the Hmong population. And she told me that she had been invited to speak about the Hmong population at the Unitarian Universalist Church. Well, I had heard about that church, but I had no idea what it was about. But I was certainly sort of assuming that they wanted to be missionaries to the Hmong people, and that's why they had this woman come to speak. But I went to the church. I sat down in the church by myself, picked up the hymnal, and began to leaf through it. the introduction about what Unitarian Universalism is. And I read those principles, and my heart just beat so fast because I could see this was a church family, a community. People were so good to each other, so nice. And they believed things that I actually believed. I didn't have to be a hypocrite. I was astounded. And when an announcement was made later on in the service that the following week would begin a class on developing a personal creed, I truly had a born again experience. I'd heard that phrase all my life, but I never felt it. But this time I was at a church that was for me, where I was at home. The more I've learned about Unitarian Universalism, the more I love it. And wherever I live, that's where I will go to church. The reason I come to First Parish in Plymouth is kind of practical. It's because it's the closest one to where I live when I moved to Carver a few years ago. And I started attending services. And this church has come to mean so much to me. The first people who reached out to make me feel welcome were the late Charles Tarbox and his wife, Jan, now Jan Blanchard, Linda Harding. They were very friendly. Val Peck, Sandy Pierce. And little by little, I got to know other people. People got to know me. And now this is my family, my church family. So that's my story. And I'm so happy to support this church. I won't say I give it 10% of my before tax income, but I give a good chunk because I also believe, even if it's not part of my religion, I believe if we are grateful with the universe will be grateful with us. That's my testimonial.
Thank you so much for that, Karen. That was very wonderful to listen to, and I agree completely. This is a beautiful and wonderful community. I'm so happy to be a part of it. Today's reading is Charter for Compassion. The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions, calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves. Compassion impels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures, to dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there, and to honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being, treating everybody, without exception, with absolute justice, equity, and respect. It is also necessary in both public and private life to refrain consistently and empathetically from inflicting pain, to act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest, to impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody, and to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies, is a denial of our common humanity. We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately, and that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion. We therefore call upon all men and women to restore compassion to the center of morality and religion, to return to the ancient principle that any interpretation of scripture that breeds violence, hatred, or disdain is illegitimate, to ensure that youth are given an accurate and respectful information about other traditions, religions, and cultures, to encourage a positive appreciation of cultural and religious diversity, to cultivate an informed empathy with the suffering of all human beings, even those regarded as enemies. We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world. Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness, compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries. Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential to human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity. It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable to the creation of a just economy and peaceful global community.
I often marvel. Thank you very much, Jeff. Your music has been delightful for us this morning. I'm so glad you're able to be with us. I often marvel at the dramatic moltings a female blue crab endures, writes Mark A. Hicks in an article entitled Educating for Social Change. She sheds her old shell to grow a new and larger one. During the 72-hour stage of transformation, her skin is tissue soft, translucent, permeable. No protection from predators, including those of us who find soft shell crab a delicacy. Predators who hunt the grasses and shallows of the bay, sensing the crab's presence, seeking to cut off the possibility of her future. An average blue crab molts 27 times over the course of a lifetime. Remaining alive requires navigating the world when most vulnerable, year after year, in order to emerge hardened, larger, and ready to face down bigger challenges. The kind of transformation that Mark Hicks describes in the story about the blue crab is one that we are called to as people of faith. We often want our lives to be safe and free from danger, but we often mistake complacency for safety. And every challenge we face does not need to be seen as threatening danger, except perhaps danger to the very thin walls of security that we have built around ourselves. The transformation to which we are called is one that goes beyond superficial and cosmetic changes. It needs to shift the paradigm of how we see ourselves and how we see the world around us. In spite of the pandemic that we have been facing for nearly a year, just about a year, this is an exciting time in our lives. It's an exciting time in this congregation and at this time in our history. We are being called and challenged by our friends and neighbors around us to understand more deeply the struggles and joys that are faced by people of color, by women, by LGBTQ folks. In order to respond to that challenge, we need to step out of our comfort zones. We need to rethink some of the things that we've been taught about ourselves, our history, and our very social structure. In order to face this world in which we live in a new and exciting way, we have to molt. We have to change the way we interact in the world, letting go of one hard shell in order to grow and grow a new shell that will accommodate more of and deeper understandings. Karen Armstrong is one of the most innovative and provocative theological thinkers in the world today. Though raised a Christian in Britain, she identifies herself today as a freelance monotheist. She has studied the world's major religions and written about their interrelationship in over 20 books, her most famous of which is A History of God, The Battle for God, and The Great Transformation. She's also written on Buddhism and Islam. Now, many of us are familiar with TED Talks, and this program has expanded considerably since its beginning. TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design. Several years ago, the organization sponsored an annual conference that brought together the world's most fascinating thinkers and doers who are challenged to give what is called the talk of their lives in 18 minutes. Those who impressed the judges were given a $100,000 prize, which came with the granting of one wish to change the world. Karen Armstrong gave a TED Talk in 2008 and used her prize money and her one wish to bring together religious leaders and scholars from all around the world to write the Charter for Compassion, which Nicolette read for us earlier. The Charter for Compassion actually even has its own website that you can go to, read more about the Charter, the people that came together to write it, and sign up as an associate of the Charter. From the root word, compassion literally means to suffer together. There's a great quote from Dr. King that goes something like, "We may have come here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now." When we are truly able to recognize that we are all on this journey together, we might be more willing to look at the world through someone else's eyes, to know life through someone else's experience and perspective, to understand who people are and how they have been shaped by their lives and their history. What makes compassion different from empathy is that we not only recognize the feelings and experiences of others, but we are also committed to doing something about it. Through our compassion, we are linked to the call for justice, the yearning to do our part to make a difference for those who continue to hurt and struggle. I've read that scientists are even exploring a biological link to compassion. They find that when we feel compassion, our heart rate slows down and regions of the brain linked to empathy and caregiving light up. At this time, when people of every background and all levels of society speak from a lack of love and compassion, isn't it time to return to the letter and the spirit of what we call the golden rule, treating others as we would want to be treated ourselves? Isn't it time for the voices of compassion, kindness, justice, and genuine caring for others? Isn't it time for that to be heard? Our Movies That Matter series continued this month with the documentary 13th by Ava DuVernay. The 13th Amendment to the US Constitution abolishes slavery and involuntary servitude, except there is a clause in there as a punishment for crime. Over the decades since the amendment's passing, we have used that clause to find ways to criminalize and demonize people of color, especially Black and brown men, and keep them in bondage and servitude. It continues to this day, along with voting restrictions that disenfranchise people of color in clear violation of the 14th Amendment. 13th is available on Netflix, and I encourage anyone who has not seen it to see it. It is not an easy documentary to watch, and there is much learning about what has happened historically since the time of the Civil War. Del Hammond actually texted me yesterday afternoon while I was working on the sermon. She and John had just watched the film. They were kind of speechless, she said. We agreed that the more we investigate and understand some of these issues, the more we realize how ignorant we are and how much we still have to learn. Like the blue crab, we have to shed one hard shell after another, the hard shell of certainty, over and over, so that we might be more vulnerable and ignorant of the realities of life for people around us. That can be difficult, I know. Those of us who are white have been taught that we are in charge, that we carry a lot of power and influence, and that our knowledge and education are superior. That sense of control and superiority are things we have to let go of. We don't have all of the answers, and there's much that we have not been taught. We also have to examine and change the racially based stereotypes that we carry within us, many of which exist on a very subconscious level. According to Joan Wink from the book Critical Pedagogy, we need to learn, unlearn, and relearn those stories that have shaped and given meaning to our lives. And when we start shifting these stories, it does sometimes feel as though we are stepping out into an empty space, an empty and vulnerable space, shedding a protective shell in order to grow one that is stronger and more adaptable. My companions and I felt a gravitational pull to the streets of Washington, D.C. at about 11 p.m. on election night 2008, writes Rob Hardees, who was then senior minister at All Souls Church Unitarian in Washington. When CNN first called the election for Obama, someone in our party threw open the windows to our apartment and shouts and blaring horns poured in on the night air. After the speeches were over, we put on our coats and followed the noise all the way to the intersection of 14th and U Streets, which police had closed to traffic. There, a circle of drummers formed the epicenter of a pulsing mosh pit of revelers. Students from Howard University danced on bus shelter roofs, and homeless people banged on cans. Fancy dressers from the nightclubs danced with progressive hipsters from the Busboys Poets Cafe. There were gay folk and straight, young folk and old, people of all colors, all of us, strangers and friends, high-fiving, fist-bumping, and hugging each other. A singing, dancing, beautiful mass of humanity, one that was replicated on streets across this city, in cities across this nation, and indeed across the world, even in the small Kenyan village where Barack Obama's father was born. Dancing in the streets, an expression of collective joy and solidarity. Rob continues, as I danced with my neighbors in the streets, I could not stop thinking about September 11th, 2001. As the memory persisted, I realized that was the last time I saw the people of my city and my nation treat one another with such tenderness, compassion, and respect. It was the last time I have felt such a palpable sense of solidarity and common purpose with my fellow citizens, and the last time I had felt the world offer its warm wishes to our nation. COVID-19 prevented much of the revelry after this election. along with the fear and anxiety of all these years of divisive political and social ideologies. I long for the day when we can dance in the streets again and treat each other with tenderness, compassion, and respect. Rob Hardy's writes, "We dance together because we need each other. Dancing simultaneously expresses and fulfills that need, and that's why it gives us such great joy." Whether letting down our guard like a molting crab or dancing in the street, we are made vulnerable by taking the chance to let go and to try something new. By stepping out into the void and merging hope and vision and action. A neighborhood in Washington, D.C. and a congregation in Plymouth, Massachusetts can envision multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-everything models of beloved community in our midst. Let us dance and sing and celebrate as we embark with each other on this amazing journey to build and rebuild a truly beloved community. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 1017, Building a New Way. I'd love for us to celebrate together that image that Deb shared in her story of the Japanese way of repairing pottery, where they use gold, where they highlight the breaks and the imperfections. We strive so much to put on a perfect veneer, and we don't need to hide our breaks. We can celebrate the things that we struggle with, the ways that we stumble and sometimes fall, because this journey is one where we need to be vulnerable and recognize, oops, I messed up that time. Let me figure out what I need to do better. So for our benediction, I would love us all to think about how we can look at, can honor, can celebrate the pieces that are broken, the ways that we need to learn to move forward by showing some of our scars, as well as those places where we have figured things out, as we molt and change and develop new and better ways of being in the world. Amen, and blessed be.